myself. They came in, grabbed him without a warrant, took him to a mental institution. I saw this happen to a Marine 2 days ago for saying, you know, that government was involved in letting jihadis into the country. This is the new authoritarianism where they basically use different psychological policies like the old Soviet Union to go after people. So here's the headline at INFOWARS.com that links over to HomelandSecurityUS.com, our guest site. Thought police kidnapped talk show host. That was my headline. They had a different headline over at the Northeast Intelligence Network that they were targeting him also because he said that he was a Christian. We're going to be going over all of that. We're going to get into FOIA documents that we've talked about the last few days. I want to get Doug's take on that. DHS monitored opposition to See Something, Say Something program. And folks did FOIA requests and found out that they are basically spying on what we're saying, what we're doing. We claim that a global government is being formed, even though it's all over the news that it's being formed. And then we'll get to the latest, the ADL. The ADL, again, there's been another police shooting in Louisiana, and they go and get the internet records of some of the friends of these suspects and go, oh, they've gone to INFOWARS.com. Alex Jones is guilty. And we see this more and more and more. Why are they trying to connect us to violence when everybody knows we're trying to stop a civil war in this country? So we're going to cover all of that with our guest. But first, when he was on with us a few months ago, he brought up some of his Homeland Security sources that were saying that the word is in September, October, into late October, early November, that there's a big green light for large crises, breakdowns, rioting. And since he was on with us, we've learned of 1.4 billion rounds of ammo being purchased total now, another 750 million last week. The Army admits in manuals they're preparing for mass civil unrest, gun confiscation. So much of what he talked about is now mainstream news. So I want to pick his brain here and find out if he's got any other tidbits from his sources. Doug Hagman is the founder and director of the Northwest Intelligence Network and CEO of a multi-state licensed private investigation agency serving many Fortune 500 clients, a 27-year veteran of conducting investigations in the private sector. He has logged over 50,000 hours of covert surveillance in his career. He's a member of the International Counterterrorism Officers Association, possesses many law enforcement-related training certifications. He's been used as a special asset of the U.S. Department of Justice, the FBI, as well as the Pennsylvania and New York State police agencies. Hagman has performed over 8,000 civil and criminal investigations throughout the United States and is also certified in forensic discipline of bloodstain pattern analysis. And I'm going to stop right there because he goes on national TV, national radio, Fox News, Neil Cavuto, you name it. And he's got a lot of really great sources, so we're honored to have Doug Hagman. Doug, you heard me throw out that whole smattering of issues, but first off, what is the latest from your sources? Where are things in this country right now dealing with stage collapse, economic implosion, war? What are the Obamanoids planning?
Well, thanks for having me on, Alex. And I got to tell you, first of all, from what my source is telling us, the economic collapse here in the United States is not a matter of if, but when. It's a virtual certainty. And basically, what is going to be the trigger mechanism that's going to perhaps initiate some sort of martial law or martial law light, travel restrictions, whatever it might be. Things are pointing towards an economic collapse or something on a national scale. Now, again, the information that we have suggests that Obama is not going anywhere for this election. In other words, you know, he's digging his feet in. He's planning on remaining president. Now, one thing my source did caution me about, and I heard you mention this, I believe it was yesterday, is these plans by the globalists, they're fluid, it's an asymmetrical war that we're experiencing, And I was cautioned by my source, hey, don't get too hooked on any one particular method of operation because of the asymmetrical nature of this of the globalist agenda. It could very well be, despite Obama's wishes not to get, leave and if he would lose, it could very well be where Romney could step in and take over the agenda, which would be a perfect method of making people like me look crazy and advancing, lulling people into sleep and then advancing the globalist agenda. And I think you touched on that yesterday during your program. So, but according to my source, they're buying the bullets for a reason, the ammunition for a reason. And it's to be used against the citizenry of this country.
Well, yeah, it's 10 times any previous year purchase. I mean, you don't need 1.4 billion rounds for domestic agencies.
That's right. Yeah, and I've seen people try to excuse the purchase by saying, well, it's an acquisition order, it locks in the price and what have you. But compared to historical events, no, this is exactly what it is, what they say it is. So, and you pointed out, too, the various other aspects of things where they've taken, they've got these armored pillboxes, so to speak, or these armored checkpoints and so on. So combine all of this together and connecting the dots, it doesn't take a genius to really see where this is all headed. It's just, again, the objectives are the same, but the plans are fluid. That's the
sure, they can throttle up or throttle back. And I think I was raising some of the guests you've talked to, some of the big stories, and I was saying, no, this is very credible what Hagman's saying, but you never know what the higher-ups are going to do. And I think we saw a turning point. In fact, I've talked to some establishment folks. Even the power structure is so scared of Obama and the mafia around him that when you have Newsweek come out and say, hit the road, Obama, on the cover, and say, we don't want you anymore, that's the system signifying that if they put him back in, it will cause such an awakening that they'll even lose trying to go to martial law. But if they try to keep the gains they've gotten with Romney, who gives us different rhetoric, then they can move forward, but albeit slower. But I was pointing out that itself is a victory, to realize that everything they've tried to do is basically blowing up in their face. But I mean, since you were on a few months ago talking about your source, we have similar sources. It's all come out in triplicate that what you were saying was true. I mean, talk about some of that, not just the pillboxes, the bullets, but what about all these Army manuals on their own sites with re-education camps and gun confiscation and telling local police, get ready for war? Yeah, that's my next question for you. What are your police and military sources saying? 'Cause I know you've broken a lot of big stories over the years with your contacts. You probably have more than I, because you really focus on that area mainly. Because they're telling them, get ready for IED attacks. They're telling them, you will fight the conservatives and libertarians. They're telling them the new terror threat is the American people. That's now gone out in the open, not just in covert documents that we were seeing years ago. What's going on there? Are they trying to start a civil war?
Well, yeah, and I think that we're seeing this in a number of different levels. First of all, you're seeing the federalization of the municipal police departments, the paramilitary influence of the municipal police departments. I've talked to police officers who've said, look, they're giving us money, they're giving us funding, that they, being the federal government, to buy these armored personnel vehicles, these various high-caliber weapons. But the catch is, they're going to, we, as a police force, are going to be under their command, and that's a fact that's sweeping the country right now. And there is a preparation. There are preparations for civil unrest, and you've reported on the as I have, on the urban training exercises. Look, there's no reason, and people have to understand, there's no reason for people, for police departments or for the military in particular, to train in an urban area, an urban setting, anywhere in the United States. They're training our military overseas to kick in doors when they don't even kick in doors in Afghanistan. So all of this together, again, look, it's all coming together.
It's pure acclamation. I mean, they're doing urban warfare drills everywhere and now admitting it's for America. The Secretary of the Army 2 months ago in the CFR said, we want troops in every city.
Right. Yeah.
So they're getting ready for the people to say no to a tyrannical government.
Exactly, and you know, it used again. There was this big, the big push for this is all conspiracy. Well, it's pretty hard to argue your point that this is a conspiracy when you're standing 5 feet away from a military vehicle parked on an American street. So you know, now we're seeing this, as you say, the acclamation, or we're seeing this intentional conditioning of the American public to get used to seeing military on the street, to get used to seeing this paramilitary. I mean, look, you drive through New York City, as we've done, we do quite frequently. It looks like the army is there. You know, they've got the weaponry, you know, it's crazy to see this. So, you know, all of this together, and you brought up a good point too, about the civil unrest, and right now what the agenda is to blame people like you and people like me with fomenting this chaos, because my source told me initially back in May, look, there's going to be chaos, there's going to be social chaos, there's going to be they're going to exploit the racial divide, they're going to exploit the economic divide, and so on. But they're also going to be blaming people like you and like me for things such as talking on the radio and encouraging a revolution, encouraging violence.
Well, you said that at the time, and now, even though we say the opposite, that whoever shoots first loses, they just keep saying that, no. Talk radio in general, they tried to say, caused the climate for the shooting in Colorado. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it kind of flashed back to the 90s when Clinton was president. You saw that whole talk radio thing with Limbaugh and Clinton, you know, around the time of Oklahoma City. Well, we're seeing a resurgence of that, except on steroids now. And the one thing we have to remember, too, I just want to mention this. I was talking to author Marinka Peshman the other day, and she reminded me, she's the author of The Whistleblower, but she reminded me the Clintons really never left power. And the influence that they have in the White House, in fact, is extremely huge. So we're seeing the same template, just revised to the time and revised to the person.
Oh, yeah, Obama is completely their front. Well, I'm asking a lot of the questions here, but specifically, before I get to some of these other issues, what is the lay of the land right now from your research, your sources, your perspective? Where are we right now? I mean, are things going well for the Obamas and their foreign banker and Clinton controllers, or are things going badly? I mean, when do you expect them to try to implode things, or what can make them back off?
Well, it's interesting because this is consistent, again, with what I heard you say. I believe it was yesterday or sometime here within the last couple of days. There's a problem with Obama, and I'm not sure if the globalists are, or if the people, his handlers, shall we say, are too happy with him right now. Obviously, Obama himself is not happy, but there's a problem there I'm getting from my DHS source. There's some discord, not only in the White House, but between the Department of Homeland Security and various other departments, the Department of Justice and the FBI, where Obama's kind of looked at as right now being a little bit unpredictable and unmanageable, which leads me to think, hey, perhaps maybe now, you know, they might go with another global. It's like a Romney type thing or whatever. But what I've been hearing is the objectives, the agenda is the same, and that is to destroy our sovereignty, to take over this country. Again, the bankers are behind this, the globalists are behind this. They're using the military, the paramilitary as assets to take over this country. And I know it sounds like a crackpot theory. I know it does, but we're living it. We're
4 billion rounds of ammo being purchased total now, another 750 million last week. The Army admits in manuals they're preparing for mass civil unrest, gun confiscation. So much of what he talked about is now mainstream news. So I want to pick his brain here and find out if he's got any other tidbits from his sources. Doug Hagman is the founder and director of the Northwest Intelligence Network and CEO of a multi-state licensed private investigation agency serving many Fortune 500 clients. A 27-year Connect Us to Violence, when everybody knows we're trying to stop a civil war in this country. So we're going to cover all of that with our guest. But first, when he was on with us a few months ago, he brought up some of his Homeland Security sources that were saying that the word is in September, October, into late October, early November, that there's a big green light for large crises, breakdowns, rioting. And since he was on with us, we've learned of 1.4 myself. They came in, grabbed him without a warrant, took him to a mental institution. I saw this happen to a Marine 2 days ago for saying, you know, that government was involved in letting jihadis into the country. This is the new authoritarianism where they basically use different psychological policies like the old Soviet Union to go after people. So here's the headline at INFOWARS.com that links over to HomelandSecurityUS.com, our guest site. Thought police kid. We claim that a global government is being formed, even though it's all over the news that it's being formed. And then we'll get to the latest, the ADL. The ADL, again, there's been another police shooting in Louisiana, and they go and get the internet records of some of the friends of these suspects and go, oh, they've gone to INFOWARS.com. Alex Jones is guilty. And we see this more and more and more. Why are they trying to kidnap talk show host? That was my headline. They had a different headline over at the Northeast Intelligence Network that they were targeting him also because he said that he was a Christian. We're going to be going over all of that. We're going to get into FOIA documents that we've talked about the last few days. I want to get Doug's take on that. DHS monitored opposition to See Something, Say Something program. And folks did FOIA requests and found out that they are basically spying on what we're saying, what we're doing.